Gold is one of the very few materials whose name alone immediately evokes thoughts of wealth, power, and value. From ancient times to the present day, people across civilizations have desired to own gold. As a result, many cultures have used gold as the ultimate symbol of anything precious. Expressions such as time is worth its weight in gold reflect this idea. And gold has long represented success, honor, and prosperity. In Vietnam, gold is far more than jewelry or a traditional wedding and Lunar New Year gift. For many families, it is also a trusted way to preserve wealth. During periods of economic uncertainty or rising inflation, countless people turn to gold as a safe investment to protect the value of their assets. Throughout history, gold even served as an official form of money in many countries and played a crucial role in maintaining the stability of financial systems. What makes gold so extraordinary? Why has this single metal been treasured around the world for thousands of years and continued to serve as a barometer of the global economy? To answer these questions, let's explore the origin of gold and its remarkable journey through the history of human civilization and economics. Why is gold always valuable? To begin with, let's examine the physical and chemical properties that distinguish gold from nearly every other metal. Gold is one of the most malleable metals known to humanity. Even a tiny amount can be hammered into incredibly thin sheets or drawn into extremely long wires without breaking. This remarkable property makes gold indispensable in jewelry manufacturing, electronic components, and numerous modern industrial applications. Gold is also exceptionally resistant to oxidation. Under normal conditions, it does not rust, corrode, or react with air or water. As a result, it can retain its brilliant shine for hundreds or even thousands of years. This is why gold artifacts discovered in ancient tombs often remain in nearly perfect condition despite their great age. Another advantage is gold's high density. It is significantly heavier than most common metals. Because of this, anyone attempting to dilute gold with cheaper materials would create a noticeable difference in weight, making counterfeit gold relatively easy to detect using simple testing methods. Gold also has a melting point of approximately 1.06 C1,947 F, which is high enough to ensure excellent stability under virtually all normal conditions of use. From both economic and philosophical perspectives, gold derives its value not only from its exceptional physical characteristics but also from its practical usefulness. Today, gold is widely used in luxury jewelry, dentistry, medicine, electronics, aerospace engineering, and even fine art. More importantly, its value is recognized by virtually every nation on Earth, making it a universally accepted asset that can be traded across international borders. Scarcity creates value. Another major reason gold remains so valuable is its scarcity. Scientists estimate that Earth contains roughly 60 trillion metric tons of gold. While that number sounds enormous, the overwhelming majority of it is buried deep within the Earth's core or scattered beneath the ocean floor far beyond the reach of today's mining technology. Throughout all of recorded human history, only about 200,000 metric tons of gold have ever been mined. Compared with the planet's total estimated reserves, this represents only an extremely small fraction. At the same time, discovering new gold deposits has become increasingly difficult. While mining costs continue to rise as companies must dig deeper, process more complex ores, and comply with stricter environmental regulations, according to the basic principles of economics, any resource that is both scarce and costly to extract in terms of labor, time, and capital will naturally command a high value. Gold is one of the clearest examples of this economic principle. Can humans create gold? Many people have wondered, if scientists can produce synthetic diamonds, could they also manufacture gold in a laboratory? The answer is yes, but only in theory and for scientific research. Physicists have demonstrated that one chemical element can be transformed into another through nuclear reactions. A gold atom contains 79 protons, while a mercury atom contains 80. In theory, if one proton could be precisely removed from a mercury nucleus, the atom would become gold. However, accomplishing this requires nuclear reactors or particle accelerators that cost enormous amounts of money to build and operate. Producing even a microscopic amount of gold would cost far more than the gold itself is worth. Consequently, artificial gold production has no practical economic value and has never become a commercially viable method because gold cannot be produced inexpensively. Its supply remains inherently limited. This limited supply has helped preserve gold's value throughout thousands of years of human history. Gold and the birth of money since ancient times. People recognized gold's unique qualities and began using it as a medium of exchange. During China's Qin dynasty, gold coins were minted to facilitate trade. Other great civilizations, including Egypt, Greece, and Rome, also regarded gold as the ultimate symbol of wealth, prestige, and political power. Gold was not chosen as money by accident. An ideal currency must possess several essential characteristics. It should be durable, scarce, easily recognizable, difficult to counterfeit, divisible into smaller units, and widely accepted by society. Gold satisfies nearly all of these requirements. For that reason, it served for centuries not only as a reliable store of value but also as a universal measure of labor, wealth, and the economic strength of nations. From that foundation, gold gradually became a symbol of financial stability. Even today, central banks around the world continue to hold it as a strategic reserve asset. By the 19th century, many countries had adopted the gold standard, establishing a common foundation for the international monetary system. Under this framework, the value of a nation's currency was no longer determined solely by the government but was backed by the country's gold reserves. Simply put, if a country possessed a certain amount of gold, it could issue only an equivalent amount of currency. This principle prevented governments from printing unlimited amounts of money at will, helping to control inflation and maintain public confidence in the national currency. For decades, the gold standard was regarded as an anchor that kept the global monetary system stable. Because the money supply was tied to gold reserves, the risk of excessive money creation and currency devaluation was significantly reduced. This is one of the main reasons many economists believe the gold standard played a crucial role in promoting stability in international trade and investment. However, historical events eventually exposed the system's weaknesses. When World War I broke out, governments needed enormous financial resources to fund their militaries, manufacture weapons, and sustain wartime operations. Since the amount of money they could issue was constrained by their gold reserves, raising sufficient capital became increasingly difficult. After the war, the global economy was struck again by the Great Depression of the late 1920s and early 1930s. Goods were being produced far faster than consumers could purchase them. Businesses collapsed in large numbers, and unemployment soared. To revive economic activity, many governments wanted to increase the money supply in order to encourage spending and investment. Under the gold standard, however, expending the money supply still depended on the amount of gold held in reserve, leaving policymakers with limited flexibility to respond effectively to the crisis. Because of these limitations, more and more countries gradually abandoned the gold standard. The turning point came in 1971, when U.S. President Richard Nixon announced that the United States would no longer convert U.S. dollars into gold. This decision, commonly known as the closing of the gold window, marked the end of the gold standard era and paved the way for today's fiat money system. From that point forward, the value of money was no longer directly linked to gold but instead relied primarily on public confidence in the government and the strength of the national economy. Beyond these historical reasons, gold also has several practical limitations that make it unsuitable as a widely used medium of exchange compared with paper currency or modern digital payment systems. First, gold is not convenient to divide into small denominations for everyday transactions. Purchasing low-cost goods and services with gold is simply impractical. Second, gold is heavy, expensive to store, and costly to transport. Carrying significant amounts of gold for commercial transactions has always involved security risks as well as storage and transportation expenses. Moreover, although gold is a long-term store of value, its market price still fluctuates in response to global economic conditions and geopolitical events. During wars, financial crises, or periods of international instability, gold prices often rise sharply. In contrast, During times of economic stability, prices may remain flat or even decline for extended periods. As a result, when it comes to convenience in everyday transactions, fiat currency remains the world's primary means of payment, although gold no longer serves as the foundation of the international monetary system. It continues to be one of the world's most popular investment assets. Whenever economic uncertainty increases, inflation accelerates, or financial markets become highly volatile, demand for gold typically rises. Many investors regard gold as a safe haven that helps preserve wealth during periods of heightened risk. Another major advantage of gold is its high liquidity. Gold can be sold for cash with relative ease in almost every country around the world. Unlike many other assets that derive their value primarily from a specific market, gold is recognized almost universally, making it easier to buy, sell, and convert into cash for individual investors. Gold is also an accessible form of wealth accumulation. People do not need substantial amounts of capital to get started. Instead, they can gradually purchase small quantities of gold or gold products that fit their financial situation. This combination of universal acceptance, long-term value preservation, and excellent liquidity has allowed gold to remain attractive for thousands of years. Despite no longer serving as the cornerstone of the modern monetary system, suppose you set aside several $1,000s every month with the goal of eventually purchasing a piece of land. Even after decades of disciplined saving, that dream may still remain out of reach. The reason is that real estate prices rarely stay constant. Instead, they generally rise over time and, in many periods, increase faster than most people's ability to save. As a result, the gap between the money you have accumulated and the value of the property you hope to buy continues to widen. By comparison, with the same amount of capital, just a few $1,000s, and using the gold price on August 24, 2024 as a reference, you could purchase approximately one tael of gold and still have a small amount of money left over. This accessibility is one of the reasons gold has long been one of the most popular vehicles for saving and investing. Especially among individuals with relatively modest amounts of capital, gold is more than just a valuable asset. It is often described as the safety brake of an investment portfolio. During periods of strong economic growth, investors typically direct more capital toward assets that offer higher potential returns. However, when markets become unstable, inflation rises, currencies weaken, or the real estate market slows down, gold often serves as a valuable form of protection. Throughout many economic crises, gold has not only retained its value but has frequently appreciated, helping investors preserve their purchasing power and reduce the impact of currency depreciation. This is also why gold is widely considered an effective hedge against inflation. As the prices of goods and services rise and the purchasing power of money declines, the gold you own can often maintain or even increase its purchasing power. Consequently, your wealth is generally better protected than if you were to hold cash alone over a long period. If you compare gold with other popular investment vehicles such as stocks, bonds, real estate, or bank savings, you'll find that each comes with its own strengths and weaknesses. Stocks have the potential to generate substantial returns, but they also carry significant risk. A single piece of negative news or a wave of selling by major investors can send stock prices plunging overnight. Real estate, on the other hand, is a high-value asset class that generally appreciates over the long term. However, it requires substantial capital, offers relatively low liquidity, and is sometimes influenced by speculation or special interest groups. As a result, not every individual investor has the experience or financial resources needed to participate effectively. Bank savings accounts are considered a more stable option, but their returns depend entirely on interest rates. If inflation exceeds the interest earned on deposits, the real value of those savings gradually declines over time. Although the account balance may continue to grow, its actual purchasing power decreases, creating a form of hidden loss that many people fail to notice. For these reasons, financial experts generally advise investors not to put all of their assets into a single investment. A well-diversified portfolio that includes stocks, bonds, real estate, bank deposits, And especially gold can help reduce risk while improving resilience against unexpected economic shocks. So why is it that whenever gold prices surge, many people see it as a warning sign of economic instability? Think of gold as the brakes on a car. A driver doesn't use the brakes to accelerate on a smooth, open road. Brakes become essential only when danger appears ahead or when slowing down is necessary to avoid a collision. The gold market operates in much the same way. When investors sense growing risks such as an economic recession, rising inflation, a financial crisis, or geopolitical tensions, they tend to move their money out of riskier assets and into gold. As a result, rising gold prices often reflect more than just stronger demand. They also indicate weakening confidence in the economic outlook, as investors seek a safe haven to protect their wealth. Although gold has long been regarded as one of the safest assets during periods of global economic or political uncertainty, it does not create much new economic value from a growth perspective. Unlike investing in businesses, building factories, or developing new technologies, simply holding gold does not directly generate jobs, products, or services for society. During periods when people accumulate and hold large amounts of gold for extended periods, enormous sums of capital become effectively frozen instead of being invested in production, business expansion, or innovation. This reduces the amount of money circulating throughout the economy, making it more difficult for businesses to access funding and ultimately slowing growth across many industries. If you look closely, you'll notice that many billionaires have built their fortunes by investing in stocks, creating businesses, or owning rapidly growing companies. In contrast, very few people become extraordinarily wealthy simply by holding gold. Gold prices may rise over time, but those gains are typically better at preserving wealth than creating explosive growth. That is why gold serves more as a store of wealth than as a powerful engine of economic expansion. From the perspective of many economists, gold repeatedly reaching new all-time highs is not necessarily a positive signal. On the contrary, it often suggests that the world is facing increasingly serious risks. One major reason is that gold prices tend to rise alongside geopolitical tensions. Whenever wars, armed conflicts, or international instability intensify, investors around the world flock to gold as a safe haven to protect their assets. For example, in May 2024, Russian President Vladimir Putin met with Chinese President Xi Jinping. During the meeting, the two leaders pledged to strengthen cooperation in response to what they described as pressure from the United States and its Western allies. Just days after the meeting, international gold prices surged to around $2,450 per ounce, more than 25% higher than the previous record set at the end of the prior year. At the same time, the conflict between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip also continued to drive capital into gold. Earlier, after Russia launched its military operation in Ukraine, the United States and many Western countries imposed sweeping economic sanctions. Several major Russian banks were removed from the international SWIFT payment system, making it far more difficult for Russia to conduct transactions with foreign partners. To reduce its dependence on the US dollar and lessen the impact of these sanctions, Russia significantly expanded its gold reserves. During the first 3 months of 2022 alone, the Central Bank of Russia purchased approximately 100 metric tons of gold, increasing its total gold holdings to about 2,300 metric tons. With an estimated value exceeding $140 billion, China has also been pursuing a strategy of diversifying its foreign exchange reserves to reduce reliance on the US dollar. In 2023, the People's Bank of China added approximately 225 metric tons of gold to its reserves and continued purchasing dozens more tons during the early months of 2024, as central banks around the world simultaneously increased their gold purchases. The surge in demand helped push the precious metal to record-breaking prices. However, behind those soaring prices lie troubling warning signs. Wars, trade disputes, and rising tensions among major powers often disrupt global supply chains, reduce international trade, increase shipping costs, and make inflation more difficult to control. The currencies of many countries lose value, investor confidence weakens, and the global economy becomes increasingly vulnerable. Consequently, a sustained rise in gold prices is often viewed as an indication that geopolitical instability remains far from over. Another major factor that influences gold prices is the strength of the US dollar and the overall level of interest rates. Because gold is primarily traded in US dollars on the global market, a stronger dollar makes gold more expensive for investors who hold other currencies. As the cost of buying gold rises, demand typically declines, putting downward pressure on gold prices. Conversely, when the US dollar weakens, gold becomes more attractive because investors can purchase more gold with the same amount of money. Higher demand generally pushes gold prices upward. This inverse relationship between supply, demand, and exchange rates is one of the fundamental principles taught in most macroeconomics textbooks. Interest rates also play a critical role. When central banks raise interest rates, investments such as savings accounts and government bonds offer higher returns, making gold, which generates no interest or dividends, less appealing. On the other hand, when interest rates fall, the opportunity cost of holding gold declines, and capital often flows back into the precious metals market. It is also important to remember that the US dollar remains the world's primary reserve currency. A strong dollar generally reflects confidence in the US economy and a high level of market stability. As a result, periods of rapidly rising gold prices often coincide with concerns that the purchasing power of fiat currencies is weakening or that investors are becoming increasingly worried about the global economic outlook. The purchasing power of money is one of the key drivers of consumption, investment, and economic growth. When a currency loses value, costs rise, business confidence weakens, and companies become more cautious about expanding their operations. This is why not only businesses but also central banks and financial institutions are rarely pleased to see gold prices continuously setting new record highs. Behind every major rally in gold often lies a warning sign that the global economy is facing significant challenges. For decades, interest rates and gold prices have generally moved in opposite directions. Put simply, investors who choose to hold gold must accept an opportunity cost when market interest rates rise. Alternatives such as savings deposits and bonds become more attractive because they provide stable returns. As a result, part of the investment capital leaves the gold market and shifts toward higher-yielding assets. In contrast, when interest rates fall to very low levels, holding cash or keeping money in a bank no longer generates meaningful returns. At the same time, inflation may gradually erode the purchasing power of money. Under these conditions, gold is often viewed as a safe haven asset, driving stronger demand for the precious metal. This is also why, whenever gold repeatedly reaches new highs, many people begin to worry that the value of money is declining and that inflationary pressures may continue to intensify. When these warning signs emerge, policymakers often step in to stabilize the market. Common measures include raising benchmark interest rates to reduce excess liquidity, increasing the supply of gold in the market, or tightening regulations on gold speculation and trading activities. The ultimate objective is to bring gold prices back to more sustainable levels and prevent excessive price surges from creating broader economic imbalances. So, when gold prices soar, who benefits and who bears the cost? The biggest winners are undoubtedly investors who patiently accumulated gold over many years. As prices climb, the value of their holdings rises accordingly, allowing them to sell at a substantial profit. The proceeds can then be reinvested in other assets such as real estate, stocks, or business expansion. However, the rising value of gold also brings several unintended consequences for the broader economy. As people watch gold prices continue to climb, more investors are tempted to buy gold in hopes of earning even greater profits. This herd behavior fuels even stronger demand, which pushes prices even higher. A self-reinforcing cycle develops in which capital is no longer flowing into manufacturing, businesses, or projects that create real economic value, but instead becomes tied up in a store of value asset. The banking sector and businesses are among those most directly affected. As gold becomes increasingly attractive, many people reduce their bank deposits or even withdraw savings to purchase gold. If this trend continues, banks will experience a significant decline in available deposits and lending capital. To maintain financial stability and discourage further capital outflows from the banking system, central banks often respond by raising interest rates. However, higher interest rates also increase borrowing costs, making both businesses and consumers more reluctant to take out loans. Companies face greater difficulty securing financing to purchase equipment, expand production facilities, or develop new products, while households become less willing to borrow for homes, vehicles, or other major purchases. For businesses, cash flow is much like blood circulating through the human body. When access to capital remains constrained for an extended period, production gradually weakens, competitiveness declines, and many companies may be forced to scale back operations or even shut down altogether. If this occurs across a large portion of the economy, the consequences can include rising unemployment, declining household incomes, and reduced social welfare benefits. As people earn less income, they naturally cut back on spending. Weaker consumer demand then reduces business revenues even further, creating a negative cycle that slows overall economic growth. The economy can be compared to a car traveling down the road. For the vehicle to accelerate, capital must continue flowing toward productive activities that generate real value. If a large share of financial resources is diverted into gold and other store of value assets, it is like pressing the accelerator while simultaneously stepping on the brakes. That is why maintaining stable gold prices and preventing excessive volatility has long been one of the key objectives of policymakers seeking to promote sustainable economic growth. What do you think lies ahead for the gold market? Will gold continue setting new record highs, or is it entering a period of correction? No one can predict the market with complete certainty, so I'd genuinely love to hear your perspective. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's discuss which scenario you believe is the most likely. Different viewpoints often lead to valuable insights that benefit everyone. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss future content. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.